Imagine this. You're camping out for the night, the sun goes down, and suddenly the air fills with a high-pitched buzz that could drive anyone insane. You reach for bug spray, zip yourself tight in a tent, and still end up swatting until sunrise. Now picture Native Americans centuries ago. No spray, no tents, no screens, and yet they slept peacefully under open skies while millions of mosquitoes filled the night. Sounds impossible, right? But for them it was just another part of daily life. Mosquitoes weren't a minor annoyance. They were a constant nightmare. Whole clouds of them could turn a summer evening into a living torture chamber. Today we complain about a few itchy bites at a barbecue. Back then it was survival. And after Europeans arrived it got worse. Swarms carried malaria, yellow fever, and other diseases that could kill. One bite might mean more than a red bump. Could be your last. The stakes were high. Native tribes couldn't just skip a good night's sleep. Tomorrow meant chasing buffalo, farming without machines, carrying heavy loads for miles, or building homes from raw timber. Lose sleep, lose strength. Lose strength and you risk starvation. So, how do you outsmart a million tiny vampires with nothing but nature on your side? First line of defense: smoke. Not the backyard barbecue kind where Uncle Joe burns the hot dogs, but slow, choking smoke designed with purpose. Tribes like the Ojibwe became masters of smudge fires. Instead of roaring flames, they piled damp leaves, green sticks, and wet grass to produce thick, rolling smoke that mosquitoes despised. Think of it as the first natural bug barrier. But the brilliance was in the details. Fires weren't placed randomly. They were positioned around sleeping areas like invisible shields. Too much smoke and you choke. Too little and the bugs swarm in. Getting that balance right took generations of practice. Some even turned food prep into bug defense. Tribes noticed that big drying fires for wild rice harvests kept mosquitoes at bay all night. Suddenly, the kitchen doubled as a mosquito fortress. Even smarter, they learned that not all plants burn the same. Cedar bark gave off oils mosquitoes couldn't stand. Sage released scents that confused their senses. Sweetgrass, with its pleasant aroma, was heavenly to humans and hellish to insects. They layered these into smudge fires, creating smoke cocktails that kept camps clear until morning. And when moving camp, they didn't leave their protection behind. Portable smudge pots, hollowed gourds, clay bowls, even giant shells, were filled with smoldering herbs and carried along. No matter where the tribe stopped, they had instant mosquito defense on demand. Wake up, splash water on the coals, cover the ashes, and you're good to go. No fancy gadgets, no cleanup hassles. But smoke wasn't the only strategy. Nature provided another weapon literally underfoot: mud. Picture coating yourself in a layer of wet clay before bed. Messy? Sure. Effective? Absolutely. Mosquitoes need bare skin to bite. Cover that skin in dried mud, and their needle-like mouths can't get through. It's like wearing a custom suit of armor made from the riverbank. And there was a bonus. As the water in the mud evaporated, it cooled the skin. On sweltering nights, this meant sleeping in natural air conditioning while staying bite-free. Kids probably loved it, rolling in mud, laughing, then jumping in the river come morning to wash it off. Parents weren't complaining either. The mud hardened into a flexible shell that lasted all night, unlike bug spray that sweats off in an hour. Different soils worked better than others. Clay from rivers stuck longer. Swamp mud worked too, though the smell wasn't exactly perfume. Coastal tribes used sandy clay that dried fast but needed thick application. Some tribes even upgraded their mud armor by mixing in plant fibers or herbs for extra stickiness and repelling power. Of course, mud had downsides. It wasn't fashionable, it was messy, and it didn't make much sense in colder seasons. But when mosquitoes were at their worst, it meant the difference between a full night's sleep and hours of misery. And when you're hunting or farming the next morning, well-rested beats itchy and exhausted every time. The key lesson? Native Americans didn't just survive mosquitoes. They mastered them. Smoke and mud weren't random hacks. They were the result of centuries of careful observation, trial, and shared knowledge. Every campfire, every muddy riverbank was another laboratory. And the discoveries they made still impress scientists today. If you're enjoying this dive into forgotten wisdom, make sure to hit like and subscribe. More incredible survival secrets are coming your way, and you don't want to miss them. Smoke and mud gave powerful protection, but Native Americans never relied on just one method. When you live outdoors year-round, you need backup plans. And some of those plans might surprise you. One of the strangest yet most effective defenses was animal fat. Not the fresh kind you'd cook with, but rancid, strong-smelling grease that would make most of us gag. To mosquitoes, though, it was unbearable. Coastal tribes used spoiled fish oils or seal fat. Inland tribes turned to bear grease or rendered deer fat. The worse it smelled, the better it worked. European explorers wrote about this practice with shock. Some described children glistening like seals, their skin shining under layers of greasy armor. To the outsiders it looked bizarre. But to the tribes, it was brilliant science in action. Mosquitoes find humans by smell. When your natural scent is buried under a layer of foul-smelling fat, you become invisible to them. The process was routine. At dusk, families melted chunks of fat over small fires until they turned into a thick paste. Then everyone coated themselves head to toe. Arms, legs, faces, even necks were covered. It wasn't pleasant, but it worked. Tests today show that rancid animal fat repels mosquitoes for several hours, not as long as modern sprays, but enough for a full night's rest. And in the morning, the hardened layer was scraped off before bathing in rivers or streams. Children learned to apply it by themselves at an early age. For them, it was as normal as brushing teeth is for us. But protection didn't always come from what people smeared on their skin. Sometimes it came from the natural allies flying overhead. Native Americans paid close attention to the rhythms of nature and saw that they weren't the only ones hunting mosquitoes. Dragonflies, often called mosquito hawks, became some of their most valued companions. A single dragonfly can eat hundreds of mosquitoes a day, and tribes encouraged them by planting flowers that attracted them. Camps filled with blooms became patrolled skies, dragonflies darting like tiny guardians. At night the shift changed. Bats took over where dragonflies left off. A single bat can consume more than 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. Native Americans protected bat roosts near their settlements, knowing these creatures offered better security than any human watch. They didn't fear them, they welcomed them. Birds played a role too. Purple martins and swallows were encouraged to nest near villages. By day they scoured the skies, cutting mosquito numbers before dusk. This understanding went deeper than just protecting a few helpful animals. Many tribes practiced deliberate environmental management. Wetlands weren't drained completely because they knew those waters also nurtured the predators that controlled mosquitoes. Certain ponds were preserved as breeding grounds for dragonflies. Sacred groves were left undisturbed because they sheltered bats. The balance wasn't accidental. It was a strategy honed over centuries. Contrast this with early European settlers who often tried brute force. They drained swamps, cut forests, and killed animals indiscriminately. But these actions often made mosquito problems worse, not better. Native Americans understood that working with the ecosystem, not against it, created natural defenses that required little maintenance. The environment itself became part of the protective shield. And when smoke, mud, and animal fat combined with the natural armies of dragonflies, bats, and birds, tribes achieved something close to peace. Nights could be spent resting instead of swatting. Children could sleep. Adults could wake with the strength needed to hunt, farm, or travel. Their survival wasn't just about endurance. It was about knowledge, passed down and refined until it became second nature. Modern science keeps confirming what they knew all along. Dragonflies really do cut down mosquito populations. Bats and birds really are essential for keeping insect numbers under control. And rancid animal fat, as unpleasant as it sounds, does confuse mosquitoes' ability to smell. What might seem strange to us was, in fact, a carefully crafted system that worked. The real brilliance wasn't in one single method, but in how all the pieces fit together. Smoke built invisible walls, mud formed a second skin, fat disguised human scent, animals devoured the rest, and the ecosystem filled in the gaps. No electricity, no chemicals, no manufactured gadgets. Just pure ingenuity born from observation and necessity. If this knowledge fascinates you, don't forget to subscribe and like. We have more stories coming that reveal just how clever and resourceful Native American survival strategies really were. Smoke, mud, fat, and animal allies gave tribes powerful defenses, but the story doesn't end there. Native Americans also learned that plants themselves carried hidden weapons against mosquitoes. And these weren't random weeds tossed into the fire. Each plant was tested, refined, and passed down like medicine. Sweetgrass became one of the most treasured tools. Braided into long ropes and burned slowly, it gave off a sweet aroma pleasant to humans but unbearable to mosquitoes. One braid could smolder all night, spreading a gentle haze that kept families safe. The Lakota were especially known for weaving thick bundles of sweetgrass and lighting them like natural incense, turning tents into protected spaces without heavy smoke. Sage worked differently. Dried sage leaves could be burned, but they were just as often rubbed directly on the skin. The oils soaked into pores and masked human scent, confusing mosquito senses. Modern science now confirms what tribes already knew. Sage oils disrupt mosquito antennae, making it difficult for them to detect warm-blooded hosts. Then there was cedar. Cedar boughs weren't only burned, they were built into the very bedding people slept on. Imagine lying on a mattress of aromatic cedar branches, their natural oils seeping into the air. The result was both comfort and protection. Some tribes wove cedar bark into mats and blankets, creating insect-resistant furniture long before anyone thought of chemical sprays. Other regions added their own arsenals. Forest dwellers burned pine needles and birch bark. Plains tribes relied on prairie sage and buffalo grass. Coastal groups found that certain marsh plants, when dried and smoked, sent mosquitoes fleeing. And some tribes brewed herbal teas, not for drinking but for washing skin. Mixtures of wild mint, bergamot, and yarrow acted as natural repellents and soothing balms for existing bites. But plants weren't the only strategy. Clothing itself became armor. Long sleeves, pants, and wraparound blankets created barriers mosquitoes couldn't pierce. At night, families often pulled blankets tightly around wrists and ankles, sealing off weak points. It wasn't about fashion, it was about survival. Even in summer heat, many endured layers of clothing rather than waking covered in welts. Shelter placement mattered just as much. Camps were positioned to catch evening breezes, because winds scattered mosquito swarms. A simple lean-to angled in the right direction turned airflow into a protective shield. And when the wind wasn't enough, elevation offered another answer. Raised sleeping platforms, sometimes only a few feet off the ground, moved people above the thickest mosquito zones. On windy plains or near lakes, the difference was dramatic. Timing also played a role. Tribes understood mosquito cycles better than most modern campers. They knew the hours just after sunset and before dawn were the worst. So some communities adjusted their sleep schedules, staying awake later or rising earlier to avoid peak biting times. Rest came during quieter hours when the skies were clearer. Perhaps the most fascinating part was how communal knowledge made these defenses stronger. A single family might experiment with a new herb or notice that a certain wind direction brought relief. That wisdom was shared around fires, turning personal discovery into cultural tradition. Generations of observation built a survival system no single person could invent alone. Modern science now confirms what seemed like simple folk knowledge. Essential oils from sage, cedar, and sweetgrass truly repel mosquitoes. Elevated sleeping areas really do reduce bites. Adjusting sleep schedules works because mosquitoes have predictable rhythms. What we see today as clever tricks were, in reality, sophisticated strategies grounded in science before science had a name. And the bigger lesson? Native Americans didn't just fight mosquitoes. They learned to live alongside them, adapting to the rhythms of nature instead of trying to crush them with chemicals or brute force. Their solutions were sustainable, renewable, and passed down for centuries. So the next time you're fumbling with bug spray at a campsite, imagine how entire nations once thrived without a single drop of it. With smoke, mud, fat, plants, clothing, and the wisdom of generations, they turned nights of buzzing chaos into peaceful rest. That's not just survival, that's mastery of the environment. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about the forgotten skills that kept Native Americans alive, make sure to subscribe and hit like. There are plenty more secrets of survival waiting to be uncovered.